Hey Thunkers, welcome back to this tutorial where we will be learning how to make an environment game app. This is a continuation of part 4, so if you haven't seen that yet, please go check that out now. Let's get started. We're going to start programming the Avatar 1 screen. Now, whatever we do on the Avatar 1 screen for programming, we're going to do the exact same things on the Avatar 2 screen and the Avatar 3 screen. So, on the Avatar 1 screen, there are a few things that we need to program. The first thing that we program is what happens when the select button is picked. What we want to do here is hide all the things on the screen that we don't need, or change their names or change their text, and make visible the things that we do need. So the first thing that we want to do is hide the options row. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to change the name label to say level 1. Let's grab the when select button click block, and we'll add in the from Avatar 1 name label text and change the text to be level 1. The next thing that we'll do is hide the options row, and this is the row that has the two buttons that say select or go back. So we'll go into the options drawer and get this from options 1 set visible to false. Next, we want the done button to become visible. So we'll go to the done button drawer, and again, we'll grab the visible block and set that to true. The last thing that we want to do when this button is clicked is we want to change the description to our first task. So we'll get the block that lets us change the text from the description drawer. And now we need to actually get data from our task data source. The way we'll do this is we'll go into the data source drawer and grab the get value from tasks block. The only thing we need to add in here is specify which task we want. So the rows had numbers. The way we'll get the row ID is by taking what our app score is and adding 1 to it. Remember, initially we set the variable myScore to 0, and there's no such row as row 0, so that's why we're adding 1 to it. This is how we'll do it. We'll go into the math drawer and grab this block, and we're simply going to get our variable myScore and add that into the first input. So now what we did is that we set the description to be the value from row 1. And that's all we need to do when we click the select button. Now we need to program what happens when the done button is clicked. That's the button that you click once you've completed the task. So we'll grab the when done button click block. The first thing that we want to do is we want to change our app score by 1. That means we finished one task, so now my score goes up by 1. So I'll go into the variables drawer and grab this block. And using the dropdown, I'm going to change the name to be myScore. So I'm adding 1 point to my score. The next thing that I want to do is change the description to be the next value in the next row. And I'll do this the exact same way as I did in the select button. So I'll just copy paste this. Now there's 2 more little things that we need to do. When I click the done button, I want to check if I'm on round 3 or if I'm on round 6 of the game. If I get to round 3, then I move up a level and my avatar picture changes. It'll get a little bigger. And if I get to round 6, I've won the game and I want to change the label to you've won, change my avatar image, and I also want to reset the game by putting my score back to 0. So to do that, we're going to use little functions. So I'll go into the functions drawer and get this first block and rename it to round 3. So if I get to round 3, what I want to do is change the label, the name label, and I want to change that to level 2. And I want to change the avatar image to the second picture that I have of my avatar. So in my case, the first one would be dog 2. And that's it for the first function. In the next function, we're going to program what happens when we get to round 6. So I'll get another functions block, and I'll rename this to be round 6. So I will change the name label again to be U1. I'll change my picture to be of avatar 3, so dog 3 in my case. Then I want to hide some of the things I don't want to see anymore. So I'll make the visibility of the description false, so it will no longer show up on the screen. I want to hide the done button, so again, I'll set its visibility to false. And that's it for now. We're going to come back to round 6 in just a little bit. We're going to add one more thing to it. Now, in order to check if we're on round 3 or round 6, we need to modify our done button block. So we're going to go into the control drawer and get an if block. We want to ask our app, are we on round 3 right now? And we're going to do that by going into the logic drawer and grabbing the first block, the equals block, and we're going to ask, is my score equal to 3 right now? And we can do that going into the math drawer and just changing the text of this to 3. Now we'll program, if my app score is 3, then I simply want to call this round 3 function. So when our app gets to round 3, it's going to call the round 3 function, and the round 3 function will just change the text of the label and it will change the picture. We're going to do the same thing to check if we're on round 6. So I'll go into this little settings button right here and add in an else if. Then I will just copy and paste this and ask, is my app score equal to 6? And if it is, then I will call the round 6 function. Let's go over what's happening with the done button again briefly. Once the done button is clicked, that means we've completed the task, so our app score changes by 1. Then we set the description of the text to be the next task. We do that by accessing our data source that we made. Then we also check that before moving on to the next task, we check, are we on round 3? If we are, then we want to change the label to say level 2, and we want to make our avatar bigger by changing its picture. And we'll also check if we're on round 6. If we are on round 6, then these blocks will happen. We'll change the text to U1, we'll change the picture of the avatar, and we'll hide everything else that we don't want on the screen. If we're neither on round 3 or round 6, it'll simply skip over this entire block and we'll just go on to try to do our next task. So I said that we were going to add something more to round 6, and we'll do that right now. The thing that we'll be adding is another data source. We're going to be using Airtable. What this will do is we'll store in our username and we'll store in our high score at the end of the game. This will later be displayed on the leaderboard screen. So let's do that now. So the first thing that you have to do to connect Airtable as a data source is to drag and drop it in from the components. I've already done that and it shows up down here. To connect Airtable to our app, we need to find a few things on Airtable. So first, you should log in and you'll see this screen. We'll need an API key, we'll need a base ID, we'll need a table name, and a view. Don't worry, I'm going to teach you how to find all of this. The first thing that we're going to find is the API key. So once you're logged in, you're going to click on this profile button over here, and you're going to click on the account tab. Once you're on the account page, this is your API key. It's hidden and you don't want anyone to see it, otherwise they'll be able to access the contents of your Airtable. So you're going to copy this key and just hold on to it for now. Now we're going to set up our database, and you can do this on the main page of Airtable. All you have to do is click Add a Base. Then you're going to click Start from Scratch and name it anything you want. So I'll name mine Leaders. Then you can go inside of the Leaders database. Here, I want to add 2 columns, one for username and one for high score. So I'm going to get rid of anything that's on the screen that I don't need, and I'll add one more column. I'll call this one high score, and I'll call the first one username. Now that we have our database ready, we need to find something called the base ID. We can find this on the documentation page for Airtable. To get to the documentation page, you're simply going to click on this Help button and then click on API documentation. Now you'll see a page like this. So you'll see curl, you'll see JavaScript. What you want to do is scroll down and you'll see this URL. You want to copy the end of the URL, so this thing right here, and that's your base ID. So for now, just copy it and hold on to it. Now we're back at Thunkable and we're going to enter in all the information we just found. So we're going to click on the Airtable component down here. We're going to add in all the information we found on the right side. So you're going to add your API key, the base ID. We have to add in a table name and grid view. If you look back to your Airtable, you'll find these. Great. Now we can go back to the Avatar 1 screen and go to the blocks. And we can make our last little edit that we said we would make in the round 6 function. So once we've won the game, we've changed the picture, we've changed the label, hit anything we don't want, we need to save whoever is playing their username and their high score. So we can do this simply by going to the Airtable drawer and getting a create row block. Now we're going to go to the objects drawer and get a create object block. We're going to add 2 fields to it like this. The first one will be called username, and the second one will be called high score. We're simply going to take the variables username and attach that to username, and we're going to take the variable my score and attach that to high score. Now these 2 fields, username and high score, have to be spelled exactly the way they appear on your Airtable. Once the username and high score have been added into the Airtable, we want to change the value that's in my score back to 0, because remember, we're resetting the game and we want to always start at 0 points. So we'll take the set block, change it to my score, and just change it to 0. The next thing that we want to do here after round 6 is just to go to the leaderboard screen. So we'll get the navigate to block and just go to the leaderboard screen. Now, everything that we did on the Avatar 1 screen, you need to add all of these blocks on the Avatar 2 screen and the Avatar 3 screen, just in case someone wants to play with those avatars instead. So I'm going to go do that now. Okay, so on the Avatar 2 screen, I've added the exact same blocks as well as the Avatar 3 screen. We're almost done. We're going to head over to the leaderboard screen. There's a couple things we have to do here. One, there's a start over button, and that's just going to take us back to the pick avatar screen. So let's program that really quickly. Once the start over button is clicked, we're simply going to navigate to the pick avatar screen. And believe it or not, those are all the blocks that you need on this screen. Now, if we go back to the design tab, remember that there is a data viewer here, and we need to populate this data viewer. So all we have to do is just hook up our Airtable to this data viewer. So you're going to come over to the properties on the right, and you're going to select your data source. So I'm going to click add, and leaderboard is already added in. The table that I want is table 1. You can always pick and choose whatever layout you want for the data viewer. Now we have to choose what column from Airtable we want these title rows to be and what we want the subtitles to be. So this is called a data binding. We're simply going to click on this dropdown, and the title will be the username, and the subtitle on the same row will be the high score. And that's it. Now your leaderboard screen is all hooked up to your Airtable, and the game is functioning. So let's test this out and see if it works. Okay, so our app looks like this. I will type in a username, and I'll pick a player, and I'll click start. Okay, so I get my first task. Let's say I've done this. I'll do the next few. Okay, I've made it to level 2. And then eventually I win the game, and since I got all 6, I've been added to the leaderboard as well. Then I can start over. And that's it. Now we've made a game where we've used 2 different types of databases, and we've learned how to connect them to our app. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thanks for thunking.